going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to introduce you. And if you can see in the chat, we have a ton of people here today who are from all over. We have their 39 weeks pregnant, 36 and a half weeks pregnant in North Carolina, Brooklyn, San Diego, 12-week-old baby in Borum Hill. We have 8 weeks old,
my people, yes,
yeah.
and yours as well.
Yes, we have lots of our people, so it's really exciting. So again, my name is Jada, the founder of Boober and Birthday Presents. Boober is a platform where expectant parents and new families can find all of their pregnancy to postpartum care providers, such as birth doulas, postpartum doulas, lactation consultants, and now mental health therapists. We fast-tracked mental health therapy in the COVID-19 pandemic. We knew, people just are so concerned, of course, when you're expecting all the unknown of going into labor with this pandemic. And then, of course, today what we're really going to want to talk about is, having a newborn at home during the pandemic and what that means, and especially, of course, with sleep. So we added mental health therapists. We used to be a totally in-person company, all about matching to in-person care. Right now, that is not possible. So every kind of care provider is available virtually if anybody needs that support. Yeah, so we are
amazing
here.
How quickly that can happen.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, even this, 3 years ago, we wouldn't be able to do this type of a Zoom call. It's quite extraordinary how it came just in time. And of course, if you didn't realize that, you kind of would think, oh my God, we always had this opportunity, but we never would be able to work from home if we didn't have this type of technology.
No, I think it's really amazing in this time and place that even though we are socially isolated, we can have these kind of pseudo face-to-face, but as good, as close as possible. And I think it makes a huge difference for the parents to not feel so alone. And even coming out in here and seeing all these people in the chat, there's 325 people right now with us, which is kind of amazing. And so let me just also, I'm going to tell them about you, a little bit about you. And then, and I also wanted to thank our media sponsor, Park Slope Parents, who are, they're an amazing community member. If you are not a member of Park Slope Parents and live in New York City, consider joining their great community. You can join when you're pregnant, stay till after your kids go to college. I use them a lot. And I'd love to introduce Dr. Harvey Karp, who is a world-renowned pediatrician and child development expert. His celebrated Happiest Baby, Happiest Toddler books and videos have guided millions of parents and are translated into 30 languages. He's also the creator of the SNOO Smart Sleeper, which we have lots of questions about today, and lots of people already have it, which is exciting, which is a new class of responsive infant bed that adds 1 to 2 hours to a baby's sleep and reduces the risk of infant sleep death by preventing dangerous rolling. SNOO has won over 20 top international honors, including the National Sleep Foundation Innovation of the Year, as an iconic, and also is in the permanent collection of the Smithsonian Institution as an iconic example of 21st century form and function. The benefits of the SNOO are to reduce postpartum depression, SIDS. Drug-exposed babies are being studied at top medical centers. We're going to hear a lot about this. Dr. Karp is an assistant professor of pediatrics at the USC School of Medicine and a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics. He is an advocate for children's environmental health and a board member of EWG, one of the nation's premier environmental protection groups. So I wanted to just give you that.
Well done. And even though you're from Los Angeles, you spoke exactly like a New Yorker, so you got it all in.
I know, nobody believes that I'm from LA, but I guess it's been a little while. Oh, we have somebody saying that we love our SNOO. So occasionally I need to.
Just lost your audio.
All right, am I back?
Yes, you're back.
All right, I can tell when it happens. It occasionally happens. So let me have you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us about yourself if there's more you'd like to share. And then we have a ton of questions that came in for you that I'm gonna ask you.
Super, well, I look forward to that. I was a practicing pediatrician for 27 years. So taking care of families in Los Angeles, New York City before I came to Los Angeles, and that's my love, is to sit in a room with moms and dads and or two parents or whatever, and older kids and younger kids, and just I always like to joke that being a pediatrician for me is interesting because it's being half a physician and half a grandmother in a certain sense, because people don't have that extended family anymore. Today if you have a nanny or a night nurse, you're pretty well off. If you have two, you're like rich. But up until 100 years ago, and for the entire history of humanity, everyone had 5 nannies, right? You had your grandmother, your aunt, your older sister. And so mothers and fathers today think that they're just supposed to do it all on their own, and that's what normal parents do, but that's not at all what normal parents do. Normal parents have helpers, have extended family, have the next door neighbor's older daughter who comes and says, no, I want to hold the baby all day long. And
Right.
so people do need to pat themselves on the back and recognize that they're doing a yeoman's job, even before the whole COVID-19 issue, which is putting additional stresses on young families. So that's really the only thing I would want to put out there.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, that's a great segue into kind of the biggest thing. One of the biggest things I wanted to talk to you about today is normally, I've been a postpartum doula for, 15 years, helping families, going into their homes, holding their baby, helping them get sleep, helping them transition to parenthood. Like you said, as a pediatrician, you're seeing people face to face normally. People have ideally family members coming by. They sometimes have hired baby nurses or postpartum doulas. They have their neighbors and friends. And right now we really can't do it, right? A lot of, due to social distancing, most people.
And Jada, there's never been a time in human history that parents are in an apartment with a 2-year-old, can't go outside, and they've got no one to come and help them. It's never happened before. People are really doing something that is incredibly stressful. And if you have a 2 and a 5-year-old and a baby, and I mean, it is tough. So that's why Chardonnay sales are, off the charts. I mean, it's really challenging for folks.
Definitely. So that's one of my questions for you. How can people who are not having any helpers overnight right now, or at all, during the day or night, which babies don't always sleep at night, as we know, they don't sleep as much at night when they first come out, right? What kind of recommendations do you have for people? I mean, I think people would like to hear. Some people are SNOO owners here. Of course, you can talk about that, and let's hear about it. And also, not everybody's going to have a SNOO bed. So let's hear kind of all of your recommendations. I know you are an expert on sleep, so we really want to hear from you about that.
So let's take a step back and talk about what normal sleep is and what the expectations are. And there are a couple of huge misconceptions that people have about babies and about sleep. I mean, everyone knows they're not going to sleep a lot in the beginning, but then you think it's pretty much, up and to the right, or whichever direction that is on the camera, it's going to get better and better and better. And by 3, 4, 5 months, they're sleeping through the night. And oftentimes, maybe 10% of times that's what happens. And 90% of the time, it's a roller coaster. It gets better, and then it's a house of cards. They go through a growth spurt or a cold or teething or a sleep regression. Daylight savings, there are all sorts of things that can upset the apple cart. And that's very disconcerting to parents who feel like they're making progress, and then suddenly, everything was the rug was pulled out from underneath them. So that's one important thing. The Happiest Baby Work, which is a book, and I'm one of the very few authors that really doesn't recommend, I mean, it's a good book, but the best way to learn this is by watching this little 30-minute video that we have. Same name, Happiest Baby on the Block. And not just for women, for men. Actually, men happen to be terrible at breastfeeding, as I know you know, but we're very, very good at baby calming and doing the swaddling and things like that. So here's the concept. The concept is that babies are born 3 months before they're really ready for the world, or 4 months. It's called the 4th trimester. Of course, women are ready at 7 months. The last, couple of months are tough and not necessarily very glamorous. But from the baby's point of view, in the womb, they have sound, they have motion, constant. Every time you breathe, you're rocking the top of your uterus. Every time your heart is pumping blood, it pumps a whooshing sound to the baby. So it's run, run, run. It's not really the sound that you hear when you have a Doppler examination at a doctor's, because the babies are underwater. So when you're underwater, you don't hear high-pitched sound. So it's really a kind of sound. And they're constantly bundled up really, really tight. And so they're born, they're immature. It's going to take them 3 months to really be good at smiling and good at getting their fingers to their mouth and things like that, and being interested in communication. So those first 3 or 4 months, you have to understand that your job is not to make your baby tough. It's really to be a walking uterus, because you're giving it to your baby every second when they're inside of you. So even if you only do it 12 hours a day, from their point of view, that's a ripoff. From your point of view, it's a lot. And that's why it's so draining and effortful, you know, having a young baby, because you are doing all of this stuff. It's why carriers are so great, or skin to skin is so wonderful. Breastfeeding is so wonderful. Going for walks, even strollers, and motion and sound, and bouncing on an exercise ball, and turning on the vacuum cleaner. People sometimes say, or going for a car ride. All of those things are related to the in utero experience.
You know that I'm bouncing here while you're talking.
I know. And that's normal for moms and dads, right? They're standing there, even when the baby's not in their arms, they're kind of doing that rocking. Why do we do that? Well, we do it because it imitates the womb. But why does that work? I mean, are babies nostalgic for, oh yeah, that's how it used to be? No, not at all. It's that it activates a reflex. When you do it correctly, you can take a baby from screaming to calm in seconds. And not always. I mean, babies cry for different reasons. They can be uncomfortable, they can be hungry. But if a baby isn't hungry or uncomfortable or otherwise, you know, exhausted and overtired, the majority of babies within, you know, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, when you do certain things that imitate the womb, you're able to trigger this reflex, and literally you'll see almost like a switch, like they'll go from screaming to quiet, like they didn't even want to, but you made them do it. It's like, like a party trick. And so how do you turn on this calming reflex? You turn it on by doing 5 things that imitate the baby's experience in the womb. It's called the 5 S's. And that's what I talk about on this video and the Happiest Baby book. So, or there's another book called The Happiest Baby Guide to Great Sleep, which is about sleep in the first 5 years. So it's much broader than just babies. But anyway, 5 S's are swaddling, which is really snug wrapping with the arms down. And we can talk about arms up or arms down, or some people say their babies don't like swaddling, but pretty much every culture around the world wraps babies with their arms down because it's so much more effective to get babies to be calm and to sleep better. The second S is side or stomach position, never for sleep, only on the back for sleep, but side or stomach is the best for calming a crying baby. The third is shushing or white noise. The fourth is swinging or rhythmic motion. And the fifth is sucking. And it turns out swaddling is the cornerstone. Everyone swaddles babies, even if you don't use a blanket, you use your arms, right? You don't let babies flail around. You stop them from that. So swaddling is the cornerstone, but it doesn't calm them necessarily. It may, in fact, make them cry more. Then you add on the other things, the white noise and the position and the swinging. And it turns out every baby's different. Some of them really respond to sound. Others don't respond to sound at all. It's really the motion that they respond to. Others, it's the position, and some need a whole combination of those things. So once you get to know your baby, meaning in the first week or so, you'll figure it out. And once you figure it out, that will always be the combination that works for your child. So, so you ask, what can people do? Well, they can learn the 5 S's and master them. Super easy to do, but it's kind of technique-y. I mean, it's kind of like learning how to hit someone's knee with it. You know how the doctors hit the knee with a
reflex
hammer. Well, if you hit the knee and you do it too softly, it's not going to do anything. If you hit it hard, but you're 2 inches off, it won't do anything. Right. So it does take a little bit of practice to get the technique right. And same with the 5 S's.
We've been teaching your technique at Birthday Presents, which is my other company where we teach newborn care. So we talk about it and recommend, and I've typed it out in the chat for people to know Dr. Karp's method.
And let me ask you a question. Do you give everyone the video?
Yeah, we send links. Yeah. We have different links that we send out, but we also demonstrate it in our classes and we work on it.
Here's the thing, and I would just counsel you about this. When babies are first born, they're actually pretty easy to calm down. And the 5 S's just work like a piece of cake. Mm-hmm. And even when parents practice it in front of you, you think that they've learned it and they haven't. Right. And they're also not competent for teaching the other family members, the mother-in-law, the boyfriend, or whomever. So we think that we've shown it and we've done it, and that means that the parent has learned it, and it's not the way at all. So babies get fussier and fussier over the first 3, 4, 5 weeks, peaks at around 6 or 8 weeks. There's crying, there's colic. That's when parents need it the most. Mm-hmm. And people don't, I mean, they will shake their head, yes, like they learned it when you're teaching them, but they get home and they may not understand the swaddling or the side stomach. And so what we see over and over again is it's not I mean, teaching it, of course, is great, and that's really appreciated.
It's a start.
But they need to have a tool when they get home to practice, make sure they're doing the technique right, teach other people. And it's often like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, the first time the baby's really screaming, that they're going, where's that video?
Right.
And
I mean,
they
I think
really practice then.
And now I think in the era of COVID-19, that's where the virtual postpartum doula is actually going to be really showing and working with them to help them kind of find that. And we'll have our, you know, our fake baby doll that we can show and work with them. But yes, thank you. I mean, we love hearing from you directly about what works best. Thank you.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
yeah.
And I'm telling that to people who are listening because we've trained thousands of Happiest Baby educators who are certified to teach this program. And then they get, they distribute the video to the people who take the class.
Well,
and so we've trained people in big hospitals, little hospitals, WIC programs, public education programs for teenage parents, military bases, child abuse prevention programs, visiting nurse programs, doula programs, childbirth education programs in 20 different nations.
amazing.
And so that's just something for folks in different geographies for to do that.
Definitely. Thank you. So in light of all of that, you know, we have a couple, we have somebody here who's a recently certified Happiest Baby educator.
Oh,
So
yay.
yay. So, and somebody actually just asked, which is relevant since you talked so much about motion and we know walking around, and often we're pacing back and forth in the house wearing the baby and whatnot, but wanting to go outside in COVID-19, do you have any recommendations for safe ways can people really ask, can I go outside of my home with my new baby? Can I take a little time outside? Can you just keep us up on the recommendations?
Sure, absolutely, you can go outside. Listen, the whole COVID-19 thing is so frustrating because honestly, I mean, it's devastating and it's tragic how many people have died a terrible death. How courageous and heroic our first responders and our on-the-line physicians and everybody else who's helping out, from the grocery workers to the sanitation workers to the clerks at the pharmacy. And thank you to everybody who's really doing that work to keep our country moving forward. Yeah. However, having said that, if everybody stayed at home for here's the thing about this virus. This virus is puny, it's weak, it's fragile. It depends on us to carry it around and to be its accomplice. And so the virus would die within a couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks at the most, if everyone just stayed indoors. And of course, we can't everyone do that, but if people took it seriously, this whole social isolation thing or social distancing thing, it would make a huge difference. And it literally could stop this thing within a month and we could get back to our economy and everything like that. Obviously, we have to do testing. There are many other factors involved, but the virus would shrivel up and die if we stop passing it from one to another. Mm-hmm. So can you go outside? Yes, you can, but you want to stay away from people. That's really the thing. It's not going to be spread in the air unless you're in some kind of enclosed environment where people have been coughing or breathing or sneezing within the last hour or so. So, and when you do go outside, you want to wear a mask. And you want to wear a mask for 2 reasons. 3 reasons. 1, to protect yourself. So you're not breathing in virus if you are around other people. 2, to protect other people, so you're not coughing accidentally and putting it in the air. And 3, to be a signal to your neighbors and your friends that you take this seriously, that you're on the program and you don't take this in any frivolous way. You're doing everything you can to do your part. And those are the reasons why. And then obviously when you get home, you should wash your hands anyway and basically just be protective. We don't put masks on babies, although in New York for sure, and a lot of other people have those little rain hoods that you can extend out if you want to.
That's what I was going to ask on the stroller. A lot of people wrote in and asked that question actually. So is having a rain guard on a stroller, if they're using a stroller, does that, yeah.
Yeah, that'll be protective because obviously it'll be very hard for the virus to work its way around, even if it's floating in the air. But in general, the key thing is to stay away from people and stay away from congested areas as much as you can. And when you are there, to wear a mask, wash your hands when you come back. I want to say a little bit more about sleep. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about SNOO and what if people don't have SNOO and all that kind of stuff. So the 5 S's you can do all day long, through into the evening to be able to be effective with your baby. But what do you do when you put your baby down?
Yes. Big question.
Yeah, this is another weird thing, a weird misconception about babies. Everyone will tell you the safest, the recommended thing is when the baby is born, put them in a bassinet or a crib on the back, no blankets around, no stuffed animals, just lying there looking up at the lights.
Right.
In the womb, they have these rhythms 24 hours a day. It's not that they can't sleep without them, but you're making it so hard for them to sleep. It's kind of like adults. Listen, you could sleep on a cement floor. You could, you just won't sleep well. You've got your pillow, your mattress, whatever, that you are used to. Those are called sleep cues. Babies are born with sleep cues or sleep associations, the motion, the sound, the snug holding. Other things too, you know, they're not on their back ever in the womb. They have like pressure on top of their heads. There's several different things that are calming to babies. Pressure on top of their chest, the way their arms used to press in. And so when they're sleeping and you just put a baby in a quiet room on a flat bed, it's sensory deprivation for a baby. That's why they don't do well. And this is pretty serious. Let me tell you something. In 1994, and I was a doctor practicing then, before 1994, we told everyone, never let your baby sleep on the back. We thought that that was dangerous. We said they would choke, they would vomit, they would die because of that. You only should put your baby on the stomach. That's what we used to teach. And in fact, babies sleep better on their stomachs. But sometimes they sleep so well they don't wake up. So we discovered that in 1994. Within 5 years, we went from about 6,500 deaths, infant deaths in the United States, to about 3,500 infant deaths. And we thought, you know what, within a few years, this is going to be over. Because then we started teaching people about breastfeeding and about don't smoke cigarettes and don't have your baby in bed with you and get vaccinated and all of these other things that improve the baby's health. We thought pretty much this SIDS sleep death thing is going to be over. Well, it turns out now, 20 years later, we've made virtually no progress. And last data was from 2017, 3,500 babies died. To put it in perspective, that's the number of Americans who died in 9/11. Except this is happening every year, distributed all across America. And it's not just poor people, it's rich people as well. You don't know who it's going to happen to. It's unpredictable. Although, of course, there are risk factors like smoking and bed sharing and sleeping on the stomach that you can reduce your risk. So that's a good thing to do. So part of the reason that it hasn't gotten better is because babies don't sleep well on the back. They cry, they fuss, and parents bring the baby in bed with them. And about half of the babies who die are in bed or on a sofa with their parents. So the parents are doing it because they're exhausted and because the baby's not sleeping well on the back. So you can either let the baby cry it out and try to do a sleep training type thing, which may or may not work. Or you can do something like bring the sleep cues to the baby, the in utero sleep cue. So that's what swaddling does. And that's what white noise does. And anyone can do that. And it's like costs almost nothing. And those things help a lot. Make sure the room isn't too hot. Make sure your baby is well fed. And we'll talk about breastfeeding a little bit there. And I don't know if we're in alignment on what I tell about breastfeeding to what you tell, but there's I think a lot of confusion about that in the community. Now, it turns out for some babies, the swaddling and the white noise works. It turns out that white noise is fantastic. You can use it for years. I mean, a lot of adults use white noise for sleep. Swaddling, however, you can only use for the first couple of months. And the reason is because once they start rolling over, which can start around 2 months or so, it's unsafe for a baby to be swaddled on the stomach. It's actually more dangerous than even if the baby is unswaddled. So that's when doctors recommend stopping swaddling. However, that's the worst possible time to stop swaddling because then the baby is getting irritable. They're startling themselves awake. They can roll, so it means they can roll to an unsafe position on their own. And so that's really one of the main reasons why I worked for years to invent SNOO. SNOO, like you said, is a responsive bed. It rocks babies and shushes them, and it has the safest swaddling. It's literally a 5-second swaddle. You can buy it even without the bed. It's called Sleepy. The New York Times rated it the #1 swaddle in America. And like you said, now the Smithsonian Institution, which is one of the 6 leading museums in the world that's had SNOO on display because it's such an amazing breakthrough product. we designed SNOO so that you attach the baby in this very easy swaddle, so they cannot roll over to an unsafe position. Can't happen. And the bed rocks them gently and shushes them all night long. But then when the baby cries, the bed responds with faster shushing and rather faster motion and louder shushing, and goes up 4 levels of that, which is built, and then it just turns off. If the baby doesn't, half of the babies calm within a minute and half the babies don't, because it's not a magic bed. It just kind of imitates a good babysitter or caregiver. And then the bed shuts off after a couple of minutes if the baby doesn't calm down, because it means the baby's hungry or needs something else. So what we see is that with this baby bed, number one, we've studied over 7,000 babies, which is by far the largest study ever done on infant sleep. And we've proven that we add 1 to 2 hours to a baby's sleep in the first week or 2 of life, which sounds kind of like, really? Is that hype? Is that honest? But it's the exact same thing you would expect if you drove all night in the car.
Right,
I mean, the baby would sleep.
If you were actively doing it yourself.
You bet. And in fact, you would sleep an hour or 2 more in the car as well if you were in the back seat with all that motion and sound. And so what we've proven is that we do add sleep, and that continues for the first 6 months. We keep babies safer. We prevent accidental rolling. We literally sleep train babies, because by the time they get to 5 or 6 months, we rarely have to do cry it out. But the most helpful thing, and this is especially now in the COVID-19 period, is that this is not so much a baby bed as it is kind of your older sister. I mean, it's like your older sister came and said, Jada, you go to sleep. I'm going to hold, rock, and shush the baby all night long. If the baby gets upset, I'll shush and rock a little bit more. And if I can't calm the baby down, I'll get you. And what parents tell us all the time is that, so every day you can read your sleep log. It gives you the real-time readout of your baby's sleep. And oftentimes they tell us, I woke up in the morning, I saw my baby woke up twice in the middle of the night. I didn't even hear it. I was in such deep sleep. The bed responded and put my baby back to sleep.
And I remember talking to you once, it's amazing, that if the baby doesn't stop crying within a relatively short period of time, they might be hungry, right? Then it's appropriate for us to pick up our baby. I would love for you to address that, because I know some people have the question, so what if I'm not feeding my baby if it needs to be fed? And I would love for you to address that for everybody.
Yeah, that's a great question. So whether you're using SNOO or not doesn't matter. If your newborn baby is sleeping more than 3 or maybe 4 hours at night, you have to wake that baby up. Doesn't matter whether they're in SNOO or not, because you have to get the feeding established, whether it's breastfeeding or bottle feeding. And of course, if you can do it, breastfeeding is by far the best for the baby and for the mother, if you can do it. It's one of those things, and we'll talk about this later on, about how important it is for women before they have the baby to connect with a breastfeeding consultant and make sure that everything is set up for success, especially now. The last thing you want is frustration with breastfeeding. It's a pretty common thing. So within 2 weeks, you've got the breastfeeding going well, you've got the baby feeding well, and then you don't have to worry about the baby sleeping too long. They will sleep as long as they need to sleep. And even for a 2-week-old, it might be 4 hours, might even be 5 hours, not usually more than that. And then what happens is they eat more during the day. So what you want to do is kind of shift their day-night, so they sleep more at night and wake during the day. So you want to feed your baby every hour, hour and a half, 2 hours at the most during the daytime if you're breastfeeding. And even if they're asleep, wake them up, try to feed them, because babies will only eat a certain number of calories in a given 24-hour period. So if they eat more of that during the day, they're naturally going to need less of it at night.
Yeah, thank you. And somebody has a question, actually. How long should you wake them up? How long is 4 hours too long? At what age can I start letting them sleep past, 3 to 4 hours?
Well, it's really once the feeding is going well. So that's usually a couple of weeks, I would say. But in the beginning, babies sometimes sleep through where they should wake up for hunger. Sometimes it's because of jaundice. Sometimes they're just not fussy babies and they forget, or there could be other things going on. Most babies don't do that, but every once in a while you find a baby who sleeps too much and you do have to wake them up. But if they go a 4-hour stretch, that's kind of my maximum for nighttime sleep.
Thank you. And then, of course, we get the question from a lot of people, which I think we get this question, SNOO or not SNOO, it doesn't matter. People always ask this question, so we're glad we have you here. Won't we get that baby used to all of these things that the SNOO does, or that, you know, the postpartum doula does, or that the mom does, or the dad does, which is holding and rocking and shushing and soothing? And so we always get that question, and I'm happy to have you here to field it, because I think it's a great one.
It is. It's really important, and it gets very confusing for people because it makes sense, right? If they're always, you know, it's kind of a habit that they might be developing. And it turns out that it's very different if you have SNOO or if you don't have SNOO. Here's why. Let's back up again for a second. So what is sleep? Sleep is this period when we kind of turn off our brains, but we're not comatose. I mean, you can hear the phone ring. You might be on the edge of the bed, but you don't fall off the bed. So you have some awareness of what's going on around you. You're just not having the normal amount of awareness. And it turns out that when you're asleep, you have waves of sleep, deep sleep and light sleep and deep sleep and light sleep. And literally, this is a kind of a funny question. People say, what age will my baby sleep through the night?
Yeah, they always ask that.
And it turns out there's a trick answer to that, which is never. Babies never sleep through the night. Kids never sleep through the night. Adults never sleep through the night. We all wake up 2 or 3 times in the middle of the night when we get into very light sleep. And here's the trick. When you get into light sleep, you're more aware of what's on in the world around you. So if you smell smoke or if your pillow's on the floor, you'll wake up, you'll get that pillow, and you'll remember waking up. But if you get into light sleep and everything is okay, you'll just go back into deep sleep and not even remember waking up. So if things are different, that will alert you to something has changed. So with babies, if the last thing they remember is being rocked or being at the breast, and you put them gently into the bassinet so they don't wake up, the last thing they remember is they were on the breast. And so when they get into light sleep, they're more likely to, to ask, you with the long hair, come back here. Having said that, you can't keep a baby from falling asleep at the breast and falling asleep in your arms. And it's the most beautiful thing you ever do with a baby. You shouldn't avoid that. That's why you have a baby, because it's so wonderful. So the key is something that I call wake and sleep technique. So, and a lot of people talk about this, where when you put the baby into the bassinet, you wake the baby up, which sounds like the dumbest advice ever. But they're kind of drunk from the milk, and they're leaning in the direction of sleep. So if you just have loud white noise playing, or you jiggle the bassinet a little bit, oftentimes within 10 or 20 seconds, they'll fall asleep. And they then have had an experience of falling asleep without having the breast in the mouth or without being in your arms. And that helps babies to start learning that process. Now, the reason I said it's totally different in SNOO is because when the baby wakes up in SNOO, it's like you in the airplane or on a train, they're automatically have these calming features that were there when they fell asleep. Yeah. So they're much more likely to fall back asleep. Excuse me, that's why we see, it's a little asthma, folks, no COVID-19, don't worry about it. Can't catch it over the screen.
No, definitely not.
But seriously, what happens when they wake up in the middle of the night is they have that experience, and they're much more likely to fall back asleep. So for example, by 2 months of age, for babies not in SNOO, the average longest period of sleep is about 5 hours. And the longest average period of sleep in SNOO at that age is about 7 hours. So we literally add 1 to 2 hours, and oftentimes 2 and 3 hours to a baby's sleep, which is pretty life-saving for a lot of parents.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I did not know that level of the statistic. So if you don't have a SNOO, and I know, when working with a parent.
Let me just say one thing. I'm so sorry to interrupt you about that, because people talk about SNOO being an expensive baby.
Yeah, tell us, sure.
Yeah, it's about almost $1,300, which is very expensive for a little bassinet. It's very inexpensive for a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week helper for the first 6 months. If you had a babysitter coming over, an hour a day, you'd pay $15, $20 for that. Mm-hmm. If you average SNOO over 6 months and you buy it, that average is about $7, $8. And then if you use it with your second child, or you sell it when you're done, it'll be like $3, $4 a day. And we rent them for under $4. It's a friggin' Starbucks, which you're going to get because you're so tired anyway. Right. So would you pay $4 for more sleep, safe, peace of mind, your baby's safe, and a 24-hour caregiver? That's why SNOO has become so popular and it's gotten all those awards, because it's taken the #1 stressor of new parents and it's introduced a solution. I mean, the stressor being exhaustion, but also the stressor of the fear of babies rolling to an unsafe position. And it just solved the problem. And by the time they're finished, this answers your question. What happens is that a 5-month-old, a 6-month-old baby is very different than a newborn baby. You feed your baby milk every meal, milk, 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 first 5-6 months. Do you worry? I've only given my baby milk. Maybe they'll never eat food. No, because when they're physiologically ready, they're ready. And it's the same thing with sleep. They're much more mature by 5-6 months. And the brain is now able to kind of hook together these sleep cycles and have longer sleep. So we very rarely find that we have to do sleep training or have a problem transitioning babies out of the SNOO, except in New York City, where for some reason people want to transition the child at 4 months of age because they want to get them into a better prep school or who knows what. And people are in such a hurry that I stopped it for naps because I don't want my baby getting dependent on it. You want your baby to learn because just like in the beginning, I'm sure you recommend, don't switch back and forth between breast and bottle because babies get confused. And it's the same thing between crib and SNOO and crib and SNOO. You want them to be predicting and expect what good sleep is going to be. And then by 5-6 months, then they're old enough to wean off of the swaddling. And we have little armholes in the swaddle, so it's very easy to wean that. And then we wean the motion. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, that was actually, I think you just addressed it though. A couple questions had come in about that. So should I just use SNOO at nighttime and then do something different during the day that doesn't move? So it sounds like the answer to that is no.
No, see, the thing is you're teaching something. And babies are pretty good learners, but not if you keep changing the script. So the more consistent you are, the faster the baby learns, the more they anticipate, oh, I know what's going to happen now. Just like with breastfeeding. In the beginning, babies don't know what a breast is. They haven't seen it before. But after you've breastfed for a week or 10 days, you just open your bra out and they get ready, right? Because they've learned, they've made that association. Same thing that happens with SNOO.
Right. Yeah, no, that's definitely very interesting. And I think, I guess one of my questions though was if somebody, let's say some people won't have it. So if they didn't, could they do, we know that parents do this. I guess I'm asking you, for the parents out there who may not have this new, could they put their hand on the baby? Could they rock their bassinet a little bit while the baby is swaddled? Do you recommend that? I mean, people naturally do it. I just wanted to ask you that question.
Yeah, they can. The one thing about rocking, and it concerns me, we saw this about the Rock and Play inclined sleeper, which was, millions of those were recalled after almost 100 babies, or I think it was more than 100 babies died in swings and inclined sleepers. And now there's some moving bassinets. But it's quite concerning because you can imagine now the baby is, if they're not secured, they're starting to roll. So the baby can roll on the side and then the bed is moving them. They're likely to roll to the stomach and get into an unsafe position. So, rocking the baby when you're there, of course, is perfectly fine.
It's okay. That's what I'm asking when you're there, if rock. Can we also talk about, wearing the baby to sleep? You said, lots of people wear the baby. It's a great way to soothe the baby, and babies often fall asleep as long as you're safe baby wearing. Or can you talk about safe baby wearing a little bit? Because I know a lot of our people out here are going to be baby wearing. Can the baby take a nap while they're baby wearing?
Absolutely. I mean, baby wearing is fantastic. And it's, of course, it's really an imitation of the baby's experience in the womb. In the hospitals for premature babies, we even use something called kangaroo care, which is where the baby is carried, but is skin to skin, which is a beautiful thing to do as well. But you have to do it safely. Or anything you do with the baby, there are certain requirements. So if the baby is in a sling, they have to be kissable. So you have to be able to reach down and kiss your baby. You don't want their necks bent down exactly. And you don't want them overheated, and you don't want any straps that can get around them. The key thing is to understand that if they get all crumpled up and their necks bent, that babies have had problems breathing in their carriers and there have been some tragedies associated with it.
Can you also speak to that? Because a lot of people we know often leave their baby, not in New York so much actually, because we're not a car culture. We don't put the babies as much in the little bucket seat carrier that goes into the car. But can you speak to that? Because my understanding is that when we arrive home, we're supposed to actually lay them down flat in a proper safe sleep surface. How long is it okay for a baby to stay in that kind of curved carrier?
Once they're out of the car, once you've stopped the car, let me put it that way, you should take them out. You don't want them staying in the car seat, in the house, or in the car, because that's the trouble is that babies' heads are heavy. They have big brains. Their necks are very weak. So it's easy for them when they're in a seated position for the head to double over. And that can cause breathing difficulties and has for many, many children. So you don't want to take that chance. It's not worth it. Rather, have the baby out, swaddled and turn on the white noise if you don't have a SNOO. One of the things that, about the risks involved, of course, everyone's worst fear and nightmare is this SIDS issue. We're very proud of the fact that we've measured now 84 million hours of infant sleep. It's never been done before. 84 million hours of sleep in SNOO, where the babies have been safe and where we've kept them on the back, which is the #1 recommendation of the American Academy of Pediatrics, National Institutes of Health. So we're the only bed that's able to do that. And our goal, in fact, we're now before the FDA to get final approval as the world's first SIDS prevention bed. And we hope and believe that we'll be able to prevent 90 or 95, no one can prevent 100%, but if we could prevent 90, 95% of the deaths, that would be, enormous, an enormous accomplishment.
Definitely. So I'm just going to throw out some questions that had come in to you. What is the best way to how do I recognize the signs of very sleepy baby? If I don't want to put them down totally asleep, when am I putting them down? At what age? Another person wrote in, is it crazy to think I could have my baby scheduled fully with sleep by 3 weeks? So if you could adjust, yes.
I mean, not that a 3-week-old can't be can't have a good solid stretch of sleep, but there are many bumps in the road. That's one of the weird things about being a new parent, because you just can't, it's like driving in the fog. You just can't see a week ahead of you. It feels like it's like years away. And then when you get to 2 months, 1 month is like, oh, 1 month, that's like when I was in high school, exactly. Right? And 3 months is like graduate school. It's like you're finding parents with a 3-month-old to tell you what happens. It's so weird. Even if you read about it, it's very hard to get your brain wrapped around all of that. And so you can think that your 3-week-old is sleeping well, and maybe they are, but believe me, there are going to be problems. 90% of the time, there are going to be problems coming up where it can all fall apart. And so don't be disappointed by that. That's the norm. Just like with toddlers, don't be disappointed if they have screaming fits and throw things at your head, because toddlers do that no matter how good a parent you are and how good a child you have. So that's what I would say about that.
All right. Somebody has a question. They have a 12-week-old who's already rolling, and they say, I can no longer swaddle, but she continues to wake herself with flailing. I'd hope to avoid pacifiers, but she'll only settle while sucking my finger. Mm-hmm. Should I introduce the pacifier? Do you have any tips for keeping her asleep that don't?
Definitely use a pacifier. Absolutely. Okay. That's the 5th S, is sucking, and pacifiers are great. And actually, pacifier use has even been associated with the reducing of the risk of SIDS. No one really knows how, but there are studies to show that. So there is a trick with pacifiers, though. I call it the reverse psychology trick. Reverse psychology trick, which is that people, when they're trying to teach babies to take a pacifier, they tend to push it in. Actually, you want to do the opposite. You want to pull it out. So once the baby is sucking a little bit, pretend that you're going to pull on it, or pretend you're going to pull it out. And it's kind of like when you're fishing and you kind of feel a nibble and you pull back on the line. The more you pull it out, the more the baby sucks it back in. And you're teaching them, if you do that 20, 30 times, you're teaching your baby to use their mouth muscles to be able to keep it in the mouth longer.
Interesting. Thank you for that tip. So can we go, we have a bunch more questions. So if you're okay to stay, if everybody's okay to stay a little bit longer. All right. Let's ask.
Okay.
Are we? Okay. Let's see. So, how can I help my baby nap for longer than 30 to 45 minutes? I use strong white noise and I swaddle her in the sleepy with both arms out. She's 5.5 months old. I know naps are essential for good night's sleep, which is not good right now, and we both need sleep. Please help.
Yeah, it's very tough at this age because a 5.5-month-old is nosy. And why sleep in the middle of the day when there's a party going on outside the room, right? So a lot of times it's hard to do that. So the strong white noise is helpful. The other thing some people do is they darken the windows if you have a bright room. That's something that can be helpful. And making sure that she's got a full tummy. Sometimes babies like warm, and so you can even warm the blanket in the dryer. And you can use that. Obviously, you don't want to overheat a child, but sometimes it's cozy and it feels good to them. And then usually by 5.5 months, kids are sleeping through the night. And the key is to put the baby down before they're too deeply asleep, before they're overtired rather. And so, 7:30 or 8 o'clock may be the right time. And there's something called a dream feed. Do you teach about dream feeds?
Yeah, we talk about dream feeds.
Yeah. So that's waking a baby up at, 11:30, 12 o'clock, just to kind of fill them up. If the last feeding was back at 7:30, sometimes you want to fill their tummy so that they're able to make it till the wee hours. You're shaking your head that babies don't sleep through the night at 5.5.
No, I laughed only because mine didn't, but no, they often do. Yes, they can.
Well, so the numbers are, it's about 50% of babies are still waking up at 6 months. With SNOO, we find that probably about 95% of babies are sleeping through at 6 months. So we literally, from usually around 4 or 5 months, we've got babies sleeping 10 hours a night or something like that.
Yeah.
9, 10 hours.
I do want to ask a few more COVID specific questions because we also had a lot of those, and that is of course very relevant right now. A big thing a lot of people wrote in about is grandparents visiting, postpartum doulas visiting, all of that. What are your recommendations in terms of people visiting right now?
Yeah, the biggest, of course, obviously this virus spreads easily from one person to the next. And that's why we're doing all the hand washing and hygiene and masks and whatnot. So if you have people come over, they should wear masks. I don't think that's being overly cautious because people are contagious before they know they're sick, several days before they know they're sick. And some people never get sick and they're only just contagious for a while. So if the grandparents have been quarantined for 3 weeks and you've been quarantined for 3 weeks, then there's probably no risk. But for people who are coming in and out of homes, like a doula might be doing, or a delivery person, that's a risk. And so you want to keep things short. You want to have distance. You want to wash door handles with alcohol after that. And you want to be neurotic and overprotective. The thing about these epidemics, and Dr. Tony Fauci said that, I think it was so profound, is that whatever you're doing seems overreactive and excessive when you're doing it. And 2 weeks later, it feels like you weren't cautious enough. The big risk with babies and COVID-19 is not the baby getting sick. I mean, the one sliver of sunshine here is that little kids don't seem very susceptible to it. Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, we don't want them getting sick and they can get ill. But the biggest risk is that both parents get sick or have to be hospitalized. I mean, that's tragic and just incredibly difficult for a family. So you want to protect yourselves at the end of pregnancy, well, all during pregnancy, but especially at the end and after you have the baby, because you don't want to be exposed. Actually, one of the things we're doing with SNOO is we're donating them for free. We're giving them away to hospitals, frontline hospitals that are dealing with a lot of infection are using the beds basically in 2 ways. One is they're using in the nursery, because they don't have enough nurses to take care of all the babies. And so this kind of is like a little robotic assistant nurse. And they're using it in the room with the mother. In case she has the virus and she's keeping the baby with her, the nurses don't want to go in and out a lot. And this is like a little caregiver being in the room with the mother. Or if she doesn't have family that can visit, or if the family is sick and they can't visit, she doesn't want the nurse coming in and out a lot, again, because that's more exposure. So this is like a little assistant for the nurse there. So if anyone has hospitals that they work at and they're interested in getting donations, they should contact us at hospital, or I don't know if it's hospital or hospitals now, at happiestbaby.com. That's .com, not .calm. It's .com, not .com. And we'd love to, be contacted by your hospital.
Great to know. Thank you. A lot of people have this question about what are the important pediatric visits that people have to go with their baby. My understanding is that many pediatricians, most are doing telemedicine for most visits, but the first visit's really critical, a vaccine visit, I believe. Can you tell us about that? And also linked into that question, a lot of people ask, what should I have at home? Should I have a baby scale, right? Normally we would say, no, you don't need to, don't overweigh your baby, but it seems that it could be useful right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say that couple of things. Number one, every healthcare provider is going to have a different schedule, so you have to coordinate this and align with your healthcare provider. If you have to go in, they may be able to see you in your car and come down to you, or you want to come at a time when there haven't been a lot of people there, and again, be protected as much as you can and wash your hands, etc. when you come back. Most practitioners are doing doing a lot of telehealth right now and trying to manage things. And the good thing, how when you're a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, you learn about how to find your way in the woods and how to find water and all that kind of thing. It's reading the cues. And parents can be taught to read the cues. I'm sure you do it all the time, to teach them how to know if a baby's getting enough to eat, watching their pee and their poop, and how wet is their mouth, and do you hear them swallowing? And so there's a lot of information you can get if you're an informed viewer, observer, that allows you to know if your baby is doing well or not doing well, and how motivated you should be to get help. Probably one of the biggest things in the beginning is about jaundice. Mm-hmm. And that's something, really jaundice and getting breastfeeding off the ground are maybe the two of the biggest issues that are pretty common and related, and that you want to make sure that you're talking to your healthcare provider or your doula or your lactation consultant to make sure you're on the right path right now.
Thank you. And anything, people also have a lot of questions about, if they've gone to the hospital and had their baby, but they have an older child, is there anything they need to do in terms of social distancing from the older child at all? Have you, a lot of people have had that question, so.
Well, here's the interesting thing. Why do we do vaccinations? We do vaccinations primarily against contagious disease. There's also tetanus, which is it's contagious, but not person to person. But most of the illnesses we vaccinate against are contagious from one person to another. So if you're social distancing, you're not being exposed to those illnesses. So there's a rationale to, again, discuss it with your healthcare provider. I'm not giving health advice here, but it's something to talk about and to get peace of mind if you do delay the vaccination schedule. So same thing with your toddler. If they're not being exposed to other little kids, then they're not a risk. Because they're not going to be picking up a sickness. If they are exposed to other kids, then you do want to be more protective with lots of hand washing and distancing.
Thank you. We had a question, another topic, and then I'll come right back and we'll just do a few more minutes, about the temperature of the room with a newborn. What is the ideal temperature for safe sleep?
It's usually around 72, something like that. But there's a better way to know if you have the right temperature, which is to feel the baby's ears, nose, and neck. So if you feel the ears and nose and they're cold, hey, the baby needs to be wrapped up more. The room needs to be warmer. If they're red and warm and the baby's neck is sweaty, then the baby's overheated. So it's actually pretty easy to tell if you've hit the sweet spot for that or not.
Thank you. And we had a lot of questions actually about two different kind of topics. One was, if I have a close job with others, but I'm having a baby, should I just find a way not to go back to work, if that's possible, until a vaccine is available? Many people asked, should I not put my infant in daycare when that becomes available again? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, all of that is so crazy making, trying to figure out what's going to happen. None of us have a crystal ball, but it's likely. So we're saying flatten the curve. When you flatten the curve, you flatten it out bigger. You make it longer, because fewer people are getting sick right now, but they're more susceptible to getting sick months later. So I think that we have to expect that this is going to ripple through our society for many more months. And the peace of mind you're going to get is by getting testing. And I think like in a daycare setting, they're going to test all the kids, and they're going to see if there are kids who are immune because they've had the illness, and there are kids who are not immune, and they'll test the teachers, and then they will be repeatedly testing, and they'll have a temperature gauge to see if anyone is sick, and if anyone is sick, they'll send them home right away. We are going to see more illnesses when that happens. It's just inevitable. But hopefully our doctors won't be so overwhelmed at that point that we'll be able to do much more rapid care. And hopefully we'll have some type of treatment, if not an immunization, we'll have treatment at least at that point so people don't get very sick. But I don't think anyone has a crystal ball about that. I do think that people are seeing that it's much, you know, you get a lot more done working from home than you probably thought was possible before. Not if you have 3 little kids running around, you want to get back to work. But for a lot of people, they're able to work from home and manage to do that and not be exposed.
And I think on some level, in a way, there's so much pressure in our society to kind of bounce right back after having a baby and go out and show the baby. And I think one of the things that's happening with this is that we are able just to have to hunker down and be with our baby and just kind of be in that rhythm of sleep and
that's right.
And feed and right.
You know, there's this thing, this concept of being macho, right? Macho is a guy who's like, I can do anything. And they, you know, have these big expectations and they're very boisterous and lots of bravado. There's a concept I call matcha, which is new moms who think they're going to do everything and be the perfect mother. There never was a mother without help. In fact, in most societies, mothers are babied as much as they're babying the baby. And so the idea that you're supposed to do all this on your own and that's what a good mom does is totally nonsense. It just never existed.
It's so hard in our society, but that's, you know, that's why reach out for a postpartum doula who can help you, or your family members, your friends. Don't be alone right now in this time. Even if you're alone, don't be alone. Bring somebody in through the screen.
Reach out for help, talk to people, get advice, read things, learn as much as you can. That's the same concept with the SNOO as well, that you need to get sleep. Sleep is actually the most important vitamin for staying healthy and for building your immune system. So if you can get an extra hour or 2 of sleep, it turns out to be super important, especially nowadays when you are the sole caregiver. You need to sleep at night because you're going to be working all day long. You don't have anyone to help you. One of the things you mentioned, which I think is really important, especially with COVID, but even before that, is maternal mental health.
Yes.
And I'm so happy that you now have support for people so that they can call and get some advice and counsel. But it's important to know that about 15% of all new mothers and a lot of new dads as well, or partners, will develop postpartum depression. Yes. And another 5% or so will get postpartum anxiety. So that's like 1 in 5. That's a lot. And we do know that there are 3 main triggers for postpartum depression. 4 if you include having a baby, but of course, if you even adopted moms and dads can get depression. So the big 3 are exhaustion, having a crying baby that you can't calm, and feeling unsupported, like it's all on your shoulders. Yeah. And so whatever you can do to get more sleep, learn how to calm a crying baby, like the 5 S's and stuff, and get help where you can, even if that's moral support over a telephone. And what we've seen with SNOO, and we're very proud of this, we're actually doing a study now. We believe that SNOO is going to be the world's first postpartum depression prevention bed. We haven't proven that yet, but we've done pilot studies to show that we can take severely depressed women, and oftentimes by helping them get an extra couple of hours sleep, but most importantly, to know that it's not all on them, that they can put their head on the pillow and the bed will take over as a caregiver at night. And that gives people a tremendous amount of comfort and peace of mind to know they can take a break, and then they can be there for their child all day long. Actually, I just got an email from a mom with 4 kids, and she has 5-year-old twins. She has a 2-year-old and a new baby. And her 2-year-old was just diagnosed with leukemia. So she's been in the hospital a lot. And she was saying how the baby is the least of the issues. You know, the
Mm.
baby's doing great. It's the other 3 kids that she has all the time with. I want to say one more thing about that, which is, interestingly, for a lot of people, it isn't the baby that's the issue, especially if you're your second child. You know, when it's your first child, it's like, oh my God, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. When you have a second child and you have a toddler at home, you go, oh my God, the baby's easy. It's the toddler that's driving me crazy. And so happiest toddler is about kids 8 months to about 5, 6, 39, 74 years of age, because we all become toddlers when we get upset enough. And these are very actionable techniques that literally in a day or two, you can reduce temper tantrums, you can improve cooperation and patience, and build emotional resilience. And so for folks who are kind of struggling with that, they might take a look at that. That's also a book and video as well.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, there's so many more questions. We could do a million more of these sessions, I think. I really appreciate you spending the hour with us. And I think if there's any, you know, we'd love to end on sort of a positive note. I know that I know all of you parents out there, those of you who are parents to be and those of you who have babies, you can do this no matter how you do it. You can get through this. You can take care of your baby. We kick into this instinctive mode and we can reach out for help. But yeah, anything that you want to share, parting words, Dr. Karp?
You know, there's 2 things I would always tell my patients. Number one, the only normal family is the one you don't know very well. Everybody's got a story and has their own traumas. They don't share on Instagram. It always looks perfect on Instagram, but believe me, everybody's dealing with hardships and challenges. And the other is, I would tell people if they had a bumper sticker, it would say, be flexible or don't. Because when you have a baby, you can have your birth plan, you can have your expectations, but you need to be able to throw it out the window and just be a survivor and get through it all if it doesn't work your way. I'm sure, you know, with your experience, you know, I see you nodding your head.
I mean, it's all, you know, yeah, best laid plans. We don't know who we're getting, we don't know who's coming out of the womb, right? Babies are all different kinds of babies. And I think, like, you know, I guess I would just like to end on that feeling. If parents are concerned about holding their baby too much, I don't think you can hold a baby too much in the beginning.
Again, they were held 24 hours a day.
Right,
so
they were held 24 hours
a day. It's a ripoff, right? Exactly. So people don't need to worry about teaching their child to not manipulate you by crying. Right. There will come a time, you know, 9 to 12 months, suddenly they learn that crying gets their way. That's a different story, but not in the first. In fact, it's quite the opposite. In the first 3, 4, 5 months, the more you immediately respond to your baby, you're building that trust and security, what we call attachment. And so actually, if you want to make a child grow into someone who's more emotionally secure, you want to meet their needs as quickly as possible with you know, responding with feeding and holding and rocking. And we're going to be doing a study with SNOO. This is an interesting thing because some people go, oh, but it's a machine raising a baby. No, it's just kind of a super swing and it's just like an extra helper. But what I do believe we're going to see is that the bed responds very quickly to a baby's need, and babies often calm with that. And our belief is that when we do the studies, we'll see that babies become more secure, more trusting, because they had this extra caregiver that was so attentive to them.
Oh, it's really interesting. Well, thank you so much for your work and love spending the hour with you. And thank you to everybody out there. Please visit Boober as needed or come to birthday presents for childbirth classes. We are here for you. We are also, even if we don't have any of the care providers or the type of care that you need right now, we're just here as a resource. So you can text Boober, you know, and reach out and we will refer you to the kind of person or care that you need. We just want to be a resource at this time period, which is hard, but we're in a different phase now where we're getting somewhat used to this new normal for now. So thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you for that service. It's so important for people. Take advantage of that. That's really, really great. We, on our website, happiestbaby.com, we also have tons of articles about the virus, about parenting, about babies and toddlers and sleep. Great. So that's something that's free to anybody, and feel free to visit.
We'll actually follow up with those important links as well. And I want to thank Park Slope Parents so much for being with us today as well. Park Slope Parents is an amazing community supporter, and we need community more than ever right now. So